Hi everyone, Stepan here. Today I'm going to continue the Endgame strategy series with a very famous endgame and a very tricky endgame and an endgame which was instructive for me because I wouldn't know how to win it, or I would have tried some of the same things Korchnoi tried in this game, but I wouldn't have found the correct follow-ups quite often. Okay, so this is Korchnoi Karpov, game 31, a very famous game. If you hadn't seen the whole game, you should see it definitely. You can find it online. We are starting in this position where Korchnoi simply trades knights, and that's the best move because your d4 pawn is hanging and you have no easy way to defend because f5 could be coming from black. Okay, now Karpov has two ways to recapture this knight. I would invite you to pause the video and try to figure out which way should be better or best, and also try to calculate and find ideas for white after each capture. Try to figure out what you would do after each capture with white. Of course, it's very hard to plan that long in advance, but in this exact position, there are obvious plans after each recapture. So try to figure them out. Okay. In the game, Karpov took with the a pawn, which should be better. C takes should lose fairly easily. After c takes b5, there are a couple of options here for white, but the easiest one is to simply try and force through your passed c pawn because it's not easy to blockade. You can also play f5 first, and the idea behind f5 is that if rook e8 is played, for example, trying to trade, then you can just take the pawn and win. So rook e8 is impossible. After f5, you have to play gf5. And now after gf5, if black tries rook e8 once again, trading rooks leads to a drawn pawn endgame. That much is clear because there's a passed pawn on the b file. But you can simply play rook c2 now. And with the insertion of f5, you have restricted the black king some more. So for example, rook e1 trying to get behind, this should be the most active move. c6, bc6 and rook c6 should be an easy win because you are going to have two passed pawns, and once you capture the a pawn, it's not going to be difficult to round up the b pawn. Also, after c takes b5, what f5 does, you can play rook c2 immediately going for the same plan, but f5 also restricts the black rook from coming to the e6 square and trying to prevent us from taking the a pawn eventually after pushing c6. So c takes b5 shouldn't be hard to refute, basically, either rook c2 or f5 first. So once again, f5 takes, and now simply rook to c2. Let's say rook e8. I'm really struggling to find a better move because the king cannot approach. If the rook tries to blockade, it's blockading our d pawn. We don't want to queen our d pawn. We would like to queen our c pawn. And if takes here, then obviously this is winning because we are going to pick up the a pawn again. So a b5 played, and hopefully you found a plan against this recapture. Now, this position is not easy to win. Technically, I believe black could hold. There has been a lot of analysis done on this game by many people and many engines. And in most of the lines, I found that black could hold, and in those in which the engine says white could win, it's not really easy to win, and it's not really clear whether it's winning or not. What's important, though, for humans like us is to understand what we should be doing in positions like this. This is a very complex rook endgame, and now there's basically only one winning plan. The winning plan is to try and queen your c pawn. Now, that may seem far-fetched, but eventually black is going to be unable to prevent one of your pawn breaks, which is going to undefend the c6 pawn, and that's pawn to a6. And once you play pawn to a6, unless the rook is on the a8 square, which is going to be hard to achieve, black is going to have to take. And once black takes, there is a great advantage for white. You have given up a pawn, but your king is going to be given entrance to the b6 square, which is basically going to be impossible to stop. Okay, before we do that, and that's a long-term plan, you want to weaken the c6 pawn, either win the c6 pawn, or you want to weaken the c6 pawn enough to make sure that d5 clears the c file. If both of these pawns are gone, then d5 would clear the c file. You could play c6, c7, c8 equals queen. Before you do that, once again, the important move is f5. You could play without it. Let's say, for example, rook a2 and king e6, the king approaches, a6 takes, maybe rook c8 defending, rook a7. This isn't easy to win. Black has a passed pawn, the rook is on the c file preventing your c pawn from queening, d5 has been prevented and not clear. So f5 prevents, once again, the king from approaching even once your rook moves. And in many variations after a6, it also prevents rook e8, rook e6. So that's also important. Now again, if the pawn isn't taken, let's find a move. Let's say rook a8, trying to simply take your pawn. Then fg6 check, king g6 and rook e7. And this is very unpleasant. It should be winning. Again, it's not that easy because black can try trading off too many pawns, for example f5, but you can play rook b6. And now if, let's say rook a3, king to d2, rook takes h3, you can simply play d5. You don't even have to take on c6. This should be winning because you're preventing rook to c3. So after rook a8, black should be much worse than after taking the pawn simply. However, after taking the pawn and g takes f5, it's not clear what black should do. The king cannot approach. You have a very clear plan of a6 and ba6 and then king c3, king b4, king a5, king b6. So black needs to seek counterplay. Now, I would invite you to try and find some counterplay for black. I did that when I was looking at this game and analyzing it for the first time. So you can pause the video. Okay, as we said, rook e8 isn't really a good move because, of course, white doesn't want to trade queens. White wants to play the rook c2 or rook a2 and push the pawns. But rook g8 is a more interesting attempt. Rook g8 actually threatens rook to g3 and trying to pick off the pawns on the king side and also restricting the white king. Now in this position, there are two options. Korchnoi went for king c3, just making sure that if rook g3 does come, he can play king to b4 and then preparing a6. And this entry idea. Another move was rook to a2. And if black simply retreats, then you can play king to c3. And then you can play a6, and then you can play king b4. And it doesn't matter that the rook is on the a file. You're going to enter b6. So the black rook shouldn't really go back to a8 in this position. It should seek counterplay with rook g3. But now king e4, rook takes pawn, and a6. This is the idea behind rook to a2. Now takes, rook h4. And when I was looking at this position for the first time, I was sure that white could win because the c5 pawn is too far advanced, but it's actually not easy. Let's say king e3. What if black just continues checking? King to d2, rook to h4, king to c3, rook to h3. If you ever go to b4, then I'm going to play rook d3. And now after rook c6, rook d4 check, king b5. This should be a draw. It may seem like it's winning. The engine says it's a draw. I thought I could win this when I was analyzing, but I ended up failing every time. And with precise play, black should hold. So rook a2 was interesting. In the game, Korchnoi played king c3, simply making sure that rook g3 is not a good move because you can play king b4. So the rook retreated back to e8. Okay, of course, trading rooks isn't good because then you don't have a6 and you don't have anything and you don't have d5 and you have no passed pawns and black has one. So rook d2. I don't think there was a better way to decline the rook trade. Maybe rook g2 is fine, but rook d2, same idea. Okay, rook e4 was played, preventing king to b4, or sort of preventing king b4 and tying down the rook as well. And in this position, pause the video, the next sequence I started analyzing on my own. Then I couldn't figure everything out, and then I got upset, then I got mad, then I kept analyzing it for an hour, and then I found the win. Then I checked with the engine, and it should be winning. Okay, so analyze a forced variation or forcing variation. Korchnoi didn't play it, and try to figure out whether it's winning or not. Alternatively, king b4 can be played, which Korchnoi did play, but try to find a better move. Okay. The insane idea is pawn to d5, and this seems absurd, but when I was looking at it for the first time, I did manage to refute rook c4 check, and after I did that, the variation made a lot of sense. Okay, king b3, c d5, okay, and now you go rook c2. You want to queen your pawn, one of your pawns. What can black do? If black trades rooks, then it's a simply winning pawn endgame. If takes, the king approaches, you can go here. And that should be about it. So after rook c2, black plays rook a4. You go c6, trying to queen your pawn. Okay, bc6 is forced. And now we go rook a2. And black could give up his rook, or he could try to go behind. So rook e4 makes most sense. a6, forcing the rook to a8, a7, rook a8, and now simply king to b4 with a winning endgame, completely winning. If the pawn was on c5 already, this would be winning for black, but in this case. So let's just check that with the engine. After d5, rook c4 can be refuted, and let's look at it once again. So king b3, c takes d5, rook c2. If rook c2, then of course we did find a win in this position. Okay, maybe. Okay, if the king approach, no, the engine says +5, so there is no way to win. Takes, there is no way to draw. Yeah, this is winning because your king is holding all the pawns. Okay, so a better variation after d5, and let's have a look at it, is rook a4 check. Now this I didn't analyze at all when I was looking at it by myself. This should be a draw, but I thought this could be discarded straight away because of d6. Apparently, after king e8, it should be drawn. And this seems insane, that rook c4, which seems like the best move, is actually losing, and rook a4 allowing d6 is a draw. And this is just a draw. Even though you're going to be picking up all of these pawns, the engine somehow holds. I would still bet that most humans would win this with white, even though the engine says it could be drawn, and this is the line to draw, but still. Okay, so d5 was interesting. I have no way of knowing whether Korchnoi was analyzing that or not, but I can imagine they either didn't have a lot of time on the clock or something else. So king b4 was played. King e8 was played, getting the king towards the queen side. a6, finally, this is the plan we were going for. ba6 and king a5. King d7 played, king to b6. And now again, if black does nothing, he's just going to lose. This pawn is defended, everything is defended, white is threatening king a6. So Karpov started going for his own counterplay with b4. Now, remember which pawn you're trying to queen. The a6 pawn is irrelevant completely. if you win that pawn, in fact, king c7 should be better for black because all of your pieces are tied down. So king a6 is not an option. You need to queen your c pawn. By removing the b7 pawn, the c6 pawn has been undefended. So d5 actually makes it impossible for black to not to take. Again, the engines say this is equal, but a human sees an advantage and goes for it. I'm going to queen my c pawn. You have to play extremely precisely. Okay, so cd is forced. Rook d check, king c8. Best move, probably just keeping an eye on the c pawn. And now, if you take on a6, maybe you draw, but you probably actually lose after b3 because now you're 3 moves away from queening and black is going to queen in 2 moves and also get behind the pawn. So this is losing and I don't think there's a way to swindle it. So a very precise move now, rook to d3. Rook d3 it is not to keep an eye on the h3 pawn, it's to simply prevent pawn to b3 and then try to win either by threatening mate or by getting the rook around and trying to queen your pawn. Now, white is a pawn down and has a passed pawn 3 squares away from queening. He's preventing the black pawn from advancing. So, after black's next move, which was a5, Karpov simply continued rook to g3. And Korchnoi continued rook to g3 and Karpov blundered. I'm going to bring us back to this position after rook d3. There was actually an easy way to draw this. So pause the video. This is the most critical position in the game, I think. And this is where I went wrong in my analysis. And I also lost the game. I also played a5. Try to find a move which draws easily. So you want no complications. Okay, the move is rook to c4. And this actually makes it impossible for white to queen. Now, there are a couple of options. You can play rook g3, trying to get behind here and start checking, or you can play rook b3, which also makes sense. Now, if you play rook to b3, I can simply play a5, threatening a4, and you're forced into this trade. And this, of course, is a draw. So after rook c4, rook b3 draws. Let's have a look at rook g3. After rook g3, trying to threaten all sorts of checks, black can play rook to c3. And if you take, you lose. That's clear. If you start checking, our pawns are equally fast. And that may seem weird, but this actually cannot be won because you don't have c6 here. In fact, black could be the one who wins this game, even though it should still technically be a draw. So after rook c3, you need to decline the rook trade and you cannot go back. So let's say you try to hold with rook to g2, just preventing b3, b2. Now king d7, the king gets out. Let's say you check it, the king goes back. You can try c6, but there's no way to go forward. b3, threatening rook to c2. Let's say rook e2, threatening mate. Just rook d3, and I can cover, and again, threatening to push my pawn. Let's say rook e8 check. If you play rook d8, it's a draw, because takes. King to b7, b2, c7 check, king to e7, c8, queen, and b1 queen. So it should be a draw. So from this position, rook c4, making sure that the c pawn doesn't move, and also threatening rook c3, and then later on rook c2, and then later on rook c1, was the way to draw. Not that a5 loses, but rook c4 was the cleanest move. Okay, in this position, rook to g3 was played. And as I said, Karpov blundered here. Rook g3, it still prevents b3. It threatens both rook to g8 and then advancing, but it also threatens king c6 and mate. So what Karpov should have done here was simply rook to d4. This prevents mate. I don't know what to suggest for white. How do you make progress? If we play king c6, trying to threaten mate, then king d8. If rook g8 check, then king e7. And again, I have a passed pawn on b4. You're not going to make progress. And if after rook d4 you play king a5, then king c7, the black king is allowed back into the game, and it's equal, but I'd rather have black, to be honest. So he should have played rook d4. Instead, he played b3, which to my mind makes no sense at all. I don't know why he played b3. I cannot explain the move. Now this move loses for several reasons. Firstly, you can take the pawn, and secondly, you can take the pawn with check after Korchnoi's next move. He played king c6. Now you can play rook d4, you can play king d8, or you can play king b8. In the game, Karpov actually played king b8, losing the b3 pawn with check. If you play rook d4, then I play rook b3. If you try a4, for example, I can just go rook b6 and get behind the pawn. Let's say king to d8. You can throw in rook b8 check, king e7, rook a8, and there's no way to save this position. And finally, if king d8 instead of king to b8 or rook d4, then again here, and I don't know what to suggest for black. It should be lost. So Karpov played king b8, which is equally bad. Rook b3 check, king a7, rook b7 check, king a6, rook b6 check, king a7, and finally king to b5. You cannot play rook b4 check because of king a5, so he tried a4, but now rook f6, rook f4, rook h6, a3, rook a6 check, and we don't have to look at this any further. Karpov resigned. Let's go back to the starting position. So Korchnoi trades knights, fine. We saw that c takes is losing easily, and this is a position in which it's very easy to play too quickly and to mess up, in my opinion. So the plan of queening your c-pawn with a6 and d5 is very strong. Even though it may not be winning, it's very strong and it's very hard to stop for humans. But preparing that with f5, restricting the black king and safeguarding the e6 square is genius and very precise play. I'm not saying that it's impossible to find for players of my own strength or lower rated players, but to have a plan, to know what's required to follow it through and to actually do it in an equal endgame against Karpov is, for me, brilliant. Okay, again, if you haven't seen the whole game, you should see the whole game. It was very interesting, and this is probably one of my favorite endgames played by Korchnoi. Not that he was famous for his endgames, but this one was just lovely. Thank you for watching. I hope you got something from the game. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.